Oi! Today I'm gonna try to finish this. Had a lot more color in it before I blasted it off to use an indirect. But I want to finish it up, try to sharpen it at least, and see how it kind of compares to some of the other points I've been making. It's got some chalk right here, a bunch of quartz right here. Hopefully you can see that. So it's pretty challenging. Got another piece. It's a lot better grade, better quality. You can kind of tell this is super smooth. It's just the local material I've been finding. So if I get time, I'm gonna go into this one too. Just mainly gonna be doing pressure, indirect if I need to get through some of this chalky stuff. I mean, that's a pretty good quartz pocket there, which is probably gonna come out. Probably gonna shorten it up a lot. My split elk tine, well, it's the part of the beam. I like to use that for a lot of crushing and turning and heavy removal. Let's work on the base first. Shorten it up a little bit. Then I'll probably come through and narrow it, thicken up the edges, and do a series or two of flakes across the whole surface if I can. It got pretty thick. Just take a little up pick. It's a square edge. It's a bit hot here in the sunlight here. So some of those flakes are stopping in that layer of chalk. Right there's that layer, that real white spot. Most of my flint knapping from the next couple months is probably going to be focused on making arrowheads and, you know, finding flint and spalling it out to make arrowheads. I need to get, you know, 20 or 30 of them made and refined real nice and sharpened good to mount on arrows to take. So I don't have a lot of spare time, and so as much as the time as I can, I'm going to spend on that. But I'm going to be doing an arrow build with stone tools, Stone Age arrow, and traditional, you know, pre-bought shafts, gluing on, and broadheads and field points, and not much to that. Maybe putting some weather protection on there. So I'm just going to bring the shape in a little bit before I get kind of crazy with it. That Stone Age penetration test I did the other day, it's kind of a spur of the moment deal. I was kind of really impressed with the arrow and the stone point. I mean, that elk rawhide's tough, and it was doubled over and kind of loose flapping, so I had shot it with a steel modern arrow broadhead and to see how it would do out of the same bow, and it didn't penetrate any farther with the steel than it did the stone. So after I shot it with that, I was like, well, let's go see what the stone will do. I know it's going to break the stone point, but it's kind of like a torture test anyway to see more or less how the arrow stood up. Could it, you know, blast into a shoulder without disintegrating and breaking all the wood up and destroying the arrow, or what would happen on the stone point? You know, shows in the video, but the stone point pushed through both sides of it, and when the sides collapsed and pulled back out, it popped the head off and shot it about 15 feet down the field. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm gonna maybe do a more dialed in test next time, not so spur of the moment. Do a couple arrows, show the steel in comparison. I know there's plenty of people on YouTube doing that, but I'm just kind of doing it for me. It's always different when you do it yourself, and with the tools that you make and the weapons that you use, and you know, I just want to see what mine does compared to these things and show you on the way. So I just thickened up the base quite a bit. I'm just running a little bit of flakes. There's a old flake scar in the base, just right past the base. It's kind of thin compared to the base. I'm trying to even some of that out. You can see this valley right there. Just trying to get that a little even. And then, you know, of course, opposite side of that, where you'd normally want to send a flake to even it out, there's a big quartz crystal pocket right there. So, and that. Knapping arrowheads to me is pretty boring. Something I don't do very often, and when I do it, you know, I'll nap out a dozen or something for arrows or whatever it is, and then be done with it for a while, months to years on end. And that point in that video was like an exaggerated Cahokia. A little bit too obtuse on the angle, a little bit wide, a little bit long. Pretty overbuilt. I think that's why it broke a lot of it off. It created too much drag when it hit the skin, that hard skin. So I'm kind of anxious to see what a more realistic size point does. You know, that thing was over an inch wide. I'm kind of collecting materials right now for other things. I've got a bunch of hickory from a friend the other day. I've been splitting that. I got some sassafras I want to try. I got a lot of videos of mine I want to try to do. Been watching a lot on those fire hardened bows that they're making out of the whitewood, the hickory, and I want to try that. I've made a few hickory bows and they will take a lot of set. So, you know, I downloaded their video that they sell, which is basically what they put on their YouTube channel, but you know, I don't mind supporting people. But it's a good video, and it kind of showed some of the different woods they've been using and the results they got. You know, they're not just taking people's words for everything, and they're experimenting on their own, and I appreciate that a lot. A lot of things just kind of taken for granted, and no one really checks it out to see if it's real or not. far as the sharpness though, on that point the other day, it wasn't sharpened at all. It was, you know, just from leftover from pressure flaking edge, maybe a little bit of cleanup. So it wasn't sharpened, but it wasn't, you know, ground dull. I don't know how much that would help on rawhide, honestly. So I got it more of a regular shape, closer to a like a preform. Gonna need to take some hump out of here, and then on this side there's some problems here where it goes into that chalk. So I'm probably going to take this side first to set the other side up. I don't abrade too much when I use antler. I mean, I will sometimes, but I will use it to turn the edge. Stubborn. There we go. Just got a little stack out. There we go. So when I got into that divot, that thin area, I didn't drive any flakes. I just kind of blended it into the hole. So that helped out a little bit. If anything, it's going to give some convexity to the tip, which isn't a bad thing. It doesn't look great, but I think it helps it. Penetration for sure. Sometimes you get carried away with the indirect and blast pretty big flakes across the point. Maybe a little deeper than you should have. I do plan on doing a comparison video. I bought a point from Ryan Gill at Hunt Primitive, and I'm not saying he makes the sharpest stone points. I don't know at all, but as far as getting my hands on some, it's pretty easy, and I do know that his points are killing animals. So I bought a hunting point out of the Texas Flint to kind of compare it to mine to see how close the sharpness is, and I've already looked at it, but I'm going to do a video on it and kind of show some realistic comparisons with it. It is a really nice made point. I also bought the taper tool that he sells, so you can get an idea of how your arrow and point are tapering. Because I did notice on that penetration test where I have the foreshaft into the main shaft of the arrow, I didn't have any kind of tapering there. It was just a little bit kind of blunt right there. Stops pretty quick, and it can tell that's where it stopped penetrating. It went through the first side fine, but the second side, it stopped it there. So I'm gonna have a video on that and comparing that tool to my that taper tool to my arrows. I know there's plenty of guys out there making sharp arrows, but you know, arrowheads, but I don't have any of them to compare them to, so I'm wanting to see, you know, how sharp mine. I mean, I can cut myself with mine. It's not like using steel where it just cuts right through you easily, but it does cut, and it will grab, you know, flesh and skin and organs, I have no doubt. So if you're watching this video and you listen to me ramble on, what do you want to see first? The comparison video of the points, making a gut or a gut sinew string, you know, primitive arrows. I'm going to do the Stone Age bow, but I'm gathering materials for it. That's going to be a while out yet, but I'm planning on making one or two of them because I am going to take one to Africa. Get on out of here, honeybee. So, you know, which one would you guys rather watch first? This point is definitely not going to be as well balanced as most points, and it's definitely not going to be able to get as sharp. I am going to dull this down quite a bit because it's kind of chalky, but it's definitely not going to be you know, a great arrowhead. I don't even know if I'll actually use it. I might haft it and hunt other animals with it, and definitely use it for the comparison, you know, if I can sharpen it. I need to grind this more to a tip. Starting to get down to more crucial where you don't apply weird pressures to it or it snaps. Alright, so I've kind of thickened up this edge and dulled it down quite a bit. I'm just going to blend into here and then take a little longer flakes here, get some of that mass out, and then probably do the same thing on this other side. And then I don't know, I might leave this side with a little bit of hump to it. You can kind of see that hump. With the hafting area, it's thin enough already. This edge is out of whack to continue on this side from about here. I'm gonna have to take it off this face. Maybe refine the tip more. I've been debating on whether or not I should post videos of me practicing shooting. I haven't really got to shoot much, well at all really, since my car wreck until like 2 weeks ago. I've been practicing every couple of days, you know, 6 or 7 shots. Trying to get my mantra and form back down. And a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm real rusty at it because I haven't done it in so long. I still have that video of my brother and I going down to Arkansas with Mike Yancey, and I'm trying to edit those clips out where it makes sense. Got a lot of video, just making it work right and not be horrible to watch. It was kind of hard to tape it and, you know, make a bow and learn what I could from him while we were there. A lot of it was him showing us a technique or what he wanted us to do, and then he would do it on one of our bows and then the other one would do it on their own bow. And a lot of the time it was my brother, you know, having the work done to his bow. He'd never made one before. so I got to film him more or less than the bow I was making. But I mean, that video should be out here pretty soon. I'm just kind of touching up on some stuff and it's almost like I need to, that chalk line kind of comes closer to the edge on this side, so it really wants to step real quick over there. This is just kind of a whittled down tine. I usually use it for notching or serrations or whatever, but sometimes it really grabs well. Come on. I have a feeling that's too stout and it's going to blow across the tip and break it off, overshoot it. Crisis averted. Most of the time I just throw this down and pick up something different, but I already committed like an hour of film time getting it to this point, so I might as well let it live. I think I'll do this last side here. Make sure it's shaped okay. Grind this a little bit. Definitely wouldn't be proud of this point, but sometimes it is what it is. Boy, that chalk just stops it. Probably have to come from the base on that. So the bad thing about this material is it might look good for a while, like this one. Looks way better, and then you'll get into it, and then there'll just be a chalk deposit in there that just kind of kills it all off. Kind of developed a little bit of a twist in the tip. I'm gonna have to work on that. That chalk line starts here, kind of cuts towards the opposite edge, and then back towards the center. So it's not very fun. Come on. So I took a bigger space between, instead of going like side by side in a series, I took a bigger space and it left a ridge in between it instead of smoothing the ridge out. Because if you crowd the flakes kind of together in succession, it'll just kind of be smooth like right here. A little bit of a ridge, but not much. But if you take a bigger step, a bigger space in between, you know, I use about the thickness of my tool to gauge that. It'll leave a bigger, thicker ridge, and if you got a high spot, you're going to take out more mass doing that than just trying to do succession. So you can't even tell where those two ridges were. It's just nice. I like to run mine in kind of parallel. When I get towards the tip, I kind of angle them back because he'll blow off a tip pretty quick. Especially if you don't got it real regular and smooth, if it's still, like you're still thinning with it. And you're putting a lot of pressure on it. That's getting kind of sketchy. It's a lot of pressure. I can already tell I need to narrow the base up to bring it more into proportion. Or I could change the point type. That's still pretty big though. I'm not sharpening it right now, but it is sharpening it. So just going off of feel and memory, this point's just a tad big. I'm not going to get too nitpicky with it. I'm not going to use it for hunting. I'm just going to use it for practice. And I really need to stop using this iffy material. I'm just getting the symmetry kind of more in shape. I'm not necessarily crushing the edge straight down. I am sending little bitty flakes in there. Schnee. Schnell. Jade. Nee. That tip's kind of thick. This little antler tine, I like it because you flatten off one face of it and it gets kind of narrow for notching, but then this back side is really good for like the profile of the point, because because it's pretty strong, but it's real precise. I mean, you can really spend a lot of time nitpicking an arrowhead, and I do that a lot. Just even this crappy point, you can really nitpick it into being balanced. Maybe not smooth surfaces and perfect, but you can really nitpick it in. And I'm constantly trying to pay attention to the edge, that it's not going too far back on one side or stepping out where I can't sharpen it later. You can see here towards the tip, it's been the problem area on this side the whole time, so I'm very careful not to overdo it. The same way on this, the chalk's here and the chalk's here, so I'm kind of just going through, getting the edge towards the center. You know, nothing crazy. And that point's less than desirable, but it'll work. The sides of this point aren't right, and it's got a different look to it than a Cahokia. Jade, Chanel, it's just a squirrel, honey. It's gonna bother me though if I don't get it a little closer. Jade. I don't know. I don't know. So that's about as much as I care to do. These sides are kind of excurvate a little bit. They're not quite the shape that I want them to be, but you know, it is. I don't care right now. It would definitely go into something. I mean, it's got a good enough shape to it where that'll happen. So, might as well notch it and be done with it. Move on to the next one. I don't make real intricate notches for these, just enough to hold some sinew. And I kind of just eyeball where I want them to be. You guys probably can't see that at all. Just make sure you're dulling it good enough to where when you flip it, it's not stalled out on you, where you don't get a step. You gotta be real careful not to put too much pressure across to where you're putting your notches too. Come on. Don't know if this is gonna save me. This is one of my favorite tools, though. It's from a deer. It gets better when it gets down to right about there, but I don't like to waste it. With these notches, I think they look good the deeper you go. But obviously the deeper you go, the more of a problem it is and the more likely you're going to break it. I might have to do another series on that. It's going to bother me. From one side it looks awesome, from the other side it looks bowed because of this mid-ridge here. And it really bothers me in points when I see that. quartz pocket right there. It's a problem. Alright, I'm not going to do any more. I mean, that's more than enough to hold sinew. It just doesn't look good. And it's just not the standard I like to keep. But we can put in one from in the bottom for fun. I don't really know if that does much. They say it's supposed to help with the pine pitch, but okay. Should use this from the get-go. It does a little bit better job of grabbing than the antler does. Okay. Don't want to make that one too much deeper. I want to match those. Spruce the edges. Sometimes I kind of like to angle these a little bit. And I honestly sometimes will come back on these little, I don't know what you call those, the ears or whatever. I know they have a technical name, I don't remember. I just ever so slightly take them just behind the edge. Just like one little pass. I think sometimes that helps with penetration. I mean, it don't take much, but sometimes when you're out of whack with your symmetry and outline, doing that will help out, if that makes any sense, if you understand that at all. I could try to sharpen this thing, but I don't think it's going to be capable of it. And you can spend a lot of, damn it, a lot of time sharpening. This isn't quite narrow enough. I'm not gonna mess with it. When I get 3 or 4 more made, I'll sharpen them all at the same time and show that video. Anyway, so not perfect at all, but I found way worse for sure. Might shoot at a rabbit.